All right. Well, Jonathan Hodel here to talk about critical incident mapping with you today. So this is something that definitely continues to come up as a need, very important for facilities, specifically school districts. So we're going to be focusing on today on how they can be able to approach this topic with facility management and critical incident mapping. So this is coming at you from a mapping standpoint. I'm a professional GIS and civil engineer, but I am not coming at this from a first responder standpoint. This is more from the mapping standpoint. So an overview of today, we'll talk about some of these pain points. These pain points that we're seeing critically in this area for school districts and facility management is just often a lack of organization with up-to-date floor plans. That's really our focus today, building floor plans, or data silos where they don't have accessible data, difficulty sharing with folks. Today we'll focus on law enforcement, being able to share this information with them. Maybe your database is all you have and you don't have good interactive floor plans, or they're hard copies, and how do you get them digitally? Also, too much time spent with measuring for space needs, and whether it's a tape measure and a clipboard or just old school methods, how can we improve on those and be more efficient? So if those ring true for some of you, this might be very applicable today's presentation. So we'll start, first of all, we're going to focus on the technology. I'm going to give an overview of the ArcGIS platform here, and then we will talk about the process, what's involved with scanning buildings and converting that information to floor plans. Then we're going to look at how to create a web application specifically for critical incident mapping. And then how can we share that application? And then finally, we'll wrap up with some concluding thoughts. So first of all, the technology. I want to talk about the ArcGIS platform here. Now, there's three main takeaway points I want to communicate today and how you can benefit from this. Number one, it's a spatial, it's a one platform, one location for all of your spatial data that you can access. Number two, you can easily update and share the information across your organization or outside of your organization. And number three, it's an expandable framework that you can build on in the future. So what are the components of ArcGIS? There's desktop, there's online, and enterprise. Desktop is similar to your CAD program. It's the heavy, software for more of the professional user. The online version, which is what we're going to be focused on today, is their cloud. And then enterprise is more if you want to bring your own, essentially bring the cloud into your own environment on premise. And we'll touch on some of the ways for distributing and sharing that information. As we look at specifically this ArcGIS platform, what can it do for facilities? We will look at floor plans. It can benefit, today's going to talk about mostly on floor plans, but it can also benefit with facility management in these other areas: space planning, routing and navigation, indoor and outdoor, real-time monitoring. If you have sensors and equipment, you need to connect in real time and visualize those through a mapping interface. It's perfect for that, as well as your management system integration. So whether that's work orders, you can integrate many of these things with the GIS to make them interactive. So I want to get into the process. What's involved with converting, information on buildings and floor plans, getting them digitally? How does this work? So for us, what we do is walk through the process, first of all, with data collection, whether that's drones. We also use GPS information and go out and actually collect we call them GPCs, ground control points, that we can use then to reference these scans. And then we actually use, in this case, we use a mobile walkthrough scanner to collect the information on the inside of the buildings to generate these floor plans. Next, after the scan data is completed, we georeference those scans. And basically georeferencing means you put them in the right world where their coordinates are at. when you first pull them out of the scanner, it really doesn't know its location unless you have a GPS unit attached to that. So we like to use those ground control points to geo-reference the scan. Then we'll export those point clouds once they're geo-referenced, and we will basically take a slice through the middle, as you can see here in this example. And from that, we will validate, make sure our floor plan information, our point cloud looks complete. And then next steps, we generate what we call the base layers. These base layers are what is going to serve as the foundation of all of our mapping applications. And so for our critical incident mapping information, we have to make sure that our floor plans are accurate, that they're kept up to date and maintained properly. And of course, as we add the attributes and labels, such as these room level labels, that's very, very important as we are able to communicate with first responders in that fashion. So we have the base maps that we generate. And then once we generate those layers and building floor plans digitally, now we're going to publish those to a secured cloud environment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and show some examples here. Finally, we're going to create the deliverables. What do you actually get as a deliverable, the finished product? What are we looking for? What are we going to get out of this? In this case, we're going to have the option so we can create additional GIS layers, whether that's for asset management or other functions. But points of interest is really critical. And you can see here on my map on the right-hand side, I've got a collection of points of interest here, building entrances, security cameras, things like that. Those are all considered what I call POIs, points of interest. And then we're going to build and configure the applications for our use. Then we're going to publish those and make them available to others that are needing access to those. And then finally, if folks need to, we provide a hosted web mapping solution for them where they can just have it updated and available as needed. So I want to get into the examples here, and we're going to start off with a blank web map, and we're going to show how we can use that web map to build out our information for the critical incident mapping. So let me do that here. And we'll start here with our blank web map. So as you can see here, I've got a blank web map. This is a college campus example. And I've got just my base map turned on, my base map gallery up here where I can select different base maps accordingly. And what I'm going to do, let's say I have my school campus here and I want to be able to start to build my own critical incident mapping information. I'm going to just start adding some layers here. Okay, so I've got some of these layers already created. I can search for them. But as I talked about the base layers, this is what you would expect to find from base layers. So first I'm going to add my facility footprints. I'm just going to click on the plus button there and we'll see that layer add into my map. Okay, and then I'm going to pull in, let's add our units. This would be our room level detail. Our polygons are going to show up as rooms. Then I want to add my details, and this would be like your walls, your stairwells, the line work. And I'm going to zoom in on that, and you can see it's going to get really messy. The reason is this is a 6-story building. So with this particular example, I've got all of these 6 levels stacked on top of each other, and we're going to really show you how to break those down so it's much more user-friendly and easy to work with. But for this example, we're showing how we actually create these web maps, and these are the kind of things that it helps you to see and understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And then last, I'm going to add in our grid. So if I just search for the word grid, I'm going to see where I have an actual facility grid. So I'm going to say floor grid features. I'm going to add those in. And you can see what that does, adds the fine grid there for more detail to my map. And then I'm going to add one more layer. I'm going to do a search for safety because I want to add a layer for safety and security. And I've got that here. And then you can see my fire extinguisher popped up there on that particular layer. So I added all my layers. Like I said, this is really busy right now on my web map, but now I'm going to save my web map. So I'm just going to save it there. And again, what I'm doing is I'm on ArcGIS Online on the cloud version. These are all base layers that ideally would be generated for you. So we're building our own map from the base layers that have been provided. And then the next step would be, now at this point, let's say I want to be able to share this with users in a way that can be delivered through what I call a web app, user-friendly application that they can share from. So I'm going to go to share. And then here you can see what I've got is I've got options for different groups that I can share with. I can make this public. I can share it with just my organization, or I can share it with any group within my organization. And here I have a lot of, a variety of groups. I can give access to different people through this means here. Right now, for this example, I want to create a web app, and I'm going to select Web App Builder. And from here, I'm just going to change my title. I'm going to say web app. And I have my tags in there. I got my folder. I want to save it. I'm going to say get started. So what this is doing, the way to think of this is I'm pulling in my web map that I created into this. And this is kind of the shell I'm putting around that web map. And again, I know this may look busy right now, but this is where we're going to really clear this up. So I'm going to select the dashboard theme. And then I'm going to add what's called widgets. And you see this layout, it kind of threw in some of these widgets. So I'm going to go ahead and modify the layout. And this is just changing how I want it to look. I'm going to simplify things a little bit here. And we'll just get down to 2 of those. I'm going to kind of dock these off on the side. You can see how it's very user-friendly in the way you can drag and drop items. So now I've got, on the right-hand side, I've got these widgets. And what I want to do with these is I'm going to go ahead and build these out for these widgets. So first I'm going to start with the floors. As you can see, it's very busy. We want to really simplify this. So I'm going to add a floor picker to my web app here. So I'm going to use what's called a group filter. There it is. And in my group filter, I'm going to call it levels, this group name, and I'm going to select equals. Okay, now it says, okay, what layers do you want to filter with this? Well, I want to filter my units. Again, that's my rooms. I'd like to filter my details, and I'd also like to filter my safety and security layer. I don't need to filter my building facilities because obviously there's just one facility there, and those don't need to be toggled by levels. So now it wants to know, okay, which field do you want to update? Okay, I'm going to update the level name on all of these. Level name, and I'm going to use the values from the rooms. And then once I click OK, we're going to see that I have my group filter widget pop up there. And I can also simplify that a little bit here, my group filter widget, by going under down here. I can start in the simple view, and I can say hide widget options. And it really simplifies my group filter there. So now I have an easy selector to choose which floor I'm interested in. I'm going to select level 1, click apply. And now you can see much more user-friendly, makes much more sense now. And I can easily toggle between my levels now that I created that group filter. Okay, so we'll stick with level 1 for now. And that's how I created that group filter. Now let's say I want to be able to add additional, in this case, say fire extinguishers. So there's my fire extinguishers. You can see a few of them in there. I want to be able to edit and add additional ones. So how I do that is I have another filter available below. You can see it says add widgets through here. So I simply click on that widget. In this case, I'm going to use what's called the Smart Editor widget. And the Smart Editor just allows us to be able to easily edit different layers. So the only layer I'd like to edit in this case is my safety and security layer. And I want to be able to delete those points if I need to. And I want to be able to set up which fields I can view. So we're just going to simplify this. I'm just going to add a few of those fields, not too many. I'm also going to add facility name and level name. And I'm going to click OK. Now what I want is under attribute actions, what I'd like to do is when I add a fire extinguisher to the map, I would like for it to automatically grab the underlying layer or level, the building floor level. I would also like it to grab the facility name. So that's what I'm going to do here. First one I'm going to call is level name. And with this, I'm going to now add, or I'm going to tell it where do I want to get that value from? So in this case, I'm going to use the units, and I'm going to get it from the level name field. And then what I want it to update is my level name in my safety and security layer. Okay. Now I also want to get the facility name. So I'm going to add a new one, facility name. I'm going to extract the value again from my units layer. I'm going to extract the value called facility name. And I'm going to, in facility name, I'm going to again update that for my safety and security. Okay. And this will kind of all come together now as we start our Smart Editor widget. So here I've got my map, I've got my layer added in, I've got my Smart Editor widget. Now I want to show how this works. Okay, so over here, I can select any one of these items, these points that I can add. So let's say I want to add an emergency exit. All right, so I go find where is that emergency exit. I click on the map at that point. You can see it's adding a point. I've got my drop down here on the side, and I can say it's a fire escape, emergency exit. I can select type. And then what's nice is it already populated my facility name, and it already populated my level name. It got those from the underlying room polygon. It had that information already attached within there. So I'm going to save that. And now you'll see that it's adding that point to the map automatically. Very simple to do, easy to add additional points. Let's say, for example, I know that I have some hazardous materials in or chemicals in the basement, and I have a storage room there that I need to update these for. So I'm going to go to my basement level 0, click apply. And let's say I have a storage closet where I know these chemicals are at. So I'm going to say, let's say these are flammable materials, and I'm going to click on my Smart Editor over here, grab that point, and I'm simply going to drop that into that room where I know those materials are residing. Again, not much information here that I need to populate. If I wanted to give it a name, I could, and I could just say chemicals in this case. I could just save that. And then of course, we'll see that update on our map. Now I've got that flagged again. So first responders, as they come in, they can be able to easily recognize, hey, we've got flammable materials in this space. Okay, so that is basically kind of how you would start to build some of those editing capabilities into the web app. Now what I'd like to do is up here, you can see I've got 1 through 5, these categories. These are additional widgets that I can build into my map. So let's add a few more. Let's just click here and let's add the basemap widget. What the basemap widget does is it allows me to, basemap gallery, allows me to toggle the background of my map so I can have any one of these. I can select imagery, I can select a variety of different base maps. So if we zoom out a little, let's see what that looks like. If we use that new widget and we want to select imagery, you can see the base map behind my buildings layers changes to the imagery. Okay. So the base map widget is very useful, especially when I'm looking across on a campus-wide level. Let's add another widget here. And this time we're going to add, instead of a base map one, we're going to add the layer list widget. Okay. And the layer list now will enable me to choose which layers I would like to see. So let's say I'm not interested right now in safety and security features. I can turn that layer off and that will be not shown in my map. So it's a way to easily keep things clean and organized. And depending on what I'd like to see, again, I can turn it back on and see those layers there very easily. That's my layer list widget. Okay. Another widget that I may want to incorporate is, I click here, and this is something that has been expressed very there's been a lot of interest expressed in this area, specifically for critical incident mapping. There's a widget here called a gridded reference system widget. Okay, so I'm going to select that. And here I can define a few options here. Let's say I want to make my grid a little bit transparent. I can define layers if I'm interested in specific layers to add that grid to. I can specify my labels and the size and the color of those labels. And then I can specify my reference system. In this case, we're going to use the military grid reference system. This is something that first responders are usually familiar with, and they may want this to be added as part of this application. So I'm going to click OK. And now you can see that added my widget. And I just wanted to show what this looks like in action as we consider our need for this grid reference system. And I'm going to select that. And then I'm going to define the area. And then in this case, I want to select it by reference system. So I wanted, as I mentioned, the military grid reference system. I'm going to define my area with a polygon, but what size do I want my grids to be? I can either do in this case, I'm going to do the 10 meter because that's the most detailed. And it's going to ask me to define this area with a polygon. So I'm simply going to click to draw the area. I'm going to draw a rectangle over my building. And then I'm going to say create grid. And as you can see, this generated a grid on top of my building that has specific reference to the 10-meter tiles, in this case, for those specific for the military grid reference system. So very useful to be able to have that available. I can reference each grid. I can see the particular ID that goes along with that location. And there's plenty of information that you can find online. I won't get into it here on what all these numbers mean, but anybody who's familiar with the MGRS would be, they would be familiar with how to use these and what those locations mean. But the point is, it's very easy to add to my application now through that. If I'm not needing that now, I can clear that out and I can get back to my regular map. So a really handy tool to build into our user app here. So I'm going to go ahead and save my changes since I've made a few updates to my web map. I'm going to go ahead and apply, go back to level 1 here, and I'm going to save those changes to my web app. Okay. So this is basically how you would create this web app. Again, we're adding the shell onto here. This shell is overlaid on that original web map that I showed you. So once I'm ready, I can test this out. And down here on the bottom left, I'm going to add, you know what, I'm going to add one more widget. Let's say I wanted to add on the left-hand side, I want to add a legend over here. I have a few different options. I could add the legend up here with another widget, or I'm going to click on the modify layout. Okay. And I'm going to drag down to add a legend on the left-hand side of my map area. Click OK. And now I can click and be able to add in my legend. And if I have a hard time finding it, I can just start typing that search. And now I'm going to add a legend in to the left-hand side, and we'll see all our different layers showing up there that we can see for easy reference with that. And you'll notice I don't see my safety and security layers, but they're turned on. But what I find is I have to zoom in, and they appear once I zoom in. So that's controllable based on our zoom level and what we want to see there. So at this point, I'm going to save my application. And if I'm ready to preview it, then down on the bottom left, I can hit launch. And now this is my completed web application. So you can imagine the power of this technology using GIS technology. I just basically created a complete web application in just a matter of 10 to 15 minutes. So you can understand how powerful that could be for facility managers when they want to be able to easily edit and update information and share that information with others. And again, so now I've got my completed web app. I can add information. Let's say I want to drop in an AED. I select that, and let's say that's here in the hallway. And again, it grabbed my facility name, the level name, And let's just call it AED number 1. And I save that. Now, other things I can do, I can attach photos. If I need to move my point, I can just move that and drag it wherever I need to across my facility. And then I can save that. There's a lot you can do with these point features. Again, these are the points of interest I was referring to earlier in our presentation. Okay, so that's kind of the finished product on that web application. Now, the question might be, how do I share this then with others? How does the sharing work? Okay, well, to give you an idea, in this particular case, if we go back here, I need to be able to control who sees this or who has access to this particular web map. And I'm going to go, and as you can see, I showed the sharing on the web map, and now I want to be able to share my my web app. Okay, so if I look at the details here, I can be able to basically look and see some of the details, and be able to add custom URLs. But for the sharing portion, I have to go to basically the sharing part of my I call them groups in my ArcGIS Online account. So this is a kind of the back end of what you're seeing. This is if, let's say, I wanted to manage all the sharing or the maps within my organization. I've got my content, I've got my different groups here, and within those groups, I can basically control the sharing and what I want others to see. So in this case, I'm just going to search for my indoors group, and I've got one called ArcGIS Indoors. And I can share my data here and see who that's shared by under this members group. So these are my members that are part of that group. Okay. So I can be able to have my web map. If I go to my content, I'm going to search, here's my critical incident mapping web app that I just created. And now here's where I want to share that with a certain group or certain individuals. I can come here to sharing level. And then by sharing this, this is where I can say, who do I want to give access to this? Okay, in this case, if I had, let's say, a specific group for law enforcement, I could easily add that group to my map here. So indoor mapping, let's say that was law enforcement, I would have that group I can share with, click OK, and then they will now have access to my critical incident mapping application. So a very controlled environment. I can control who sees it. I can control who edits it. It's really, really valuable and handy to be able to have that information. Okay. Another thing we can do is, let's go back to our web map here. Let's say I wanted to make, instead of a web application, let's say I wanted to make what we call a dashboard. Dashboards are really handy tools and features to be able to, again, share this in a unique way. And I can go, instead of Web App Builder this time, I can go to ArcGIS Dashboard. And in this case, we'll rename a title of our dashboard. And we will say, take off the word complete there for our demo purposes. And I'm going to say done. And this will open up the configuration tool to build a dashboard. And what dashboards can do is they can provide a variety of viewing tools. Dashboards are generally view only. You can see different metrics across your facility and your organization. So I'm going to show you, rather than kind of walk through all the details on how to build these, it's similar, on your layout, you can control your different elements, but I'm going to kind of jump ahead and show you the finished product on what something like this looks like. So in this example, this is, I call it a facility manager light. I've got a example here of basically a nursing home campus, and I can search for facility, and I can select it, and it'll zoom into that particular facility. Then I can drop down and search by floor. So I can look for a specific floor. I can pull up information on that facility. And then I can even jump down, and this is for critical incident mapping, a lot of value when I can jump into the specific unit. So I just select unit 5W. It takes me right into where that exact location is. So this dashboard, again, gives me a lot of flexibility on quickly viewing and pulling up information on that particular area. Again, I can share this with law enforcement officials and others who need access to this for first responders. And these dashboards are ways you can easily communicate and manage information and display information for decision makers. Okay. So that kind of wraps up the demo portion of that. I want to go back to our presentation portion and kind of wrap things up here. I will just touch on one example I'd like to show you is in a video here. I just want to show some additional functionality that you can use GIS for. In this case, we can show how you can use it for a variety of options, including searching features. So in this case, I'm using what's called ArcGIS Indoors as my template. And you can search for different buildings, facilities, and then, like I said, you can get down more into the room level in more detail there. You can also do routing and navigation. I thought it'd be helpful, especially for what we're discussing here with critical incident mapping. The ability to route from one location, even outside, and be able to route to locations within the building. So here we're finding a particular location in the building. We can search for those locations, and then we can generate a route, a turn-by-turn directions. In this case, from the parking lot, up the stairs to the correct level, and then to the correct room. So you can understand how valuable this might be for first responders when all they know is maybe an office or a room. They can simply search, enter their location, and then it'll give them turn-by-turn navigation. If this is needed for, you can also adjust this. If you were making this as available to the public in a kiosk form, you could also adjust your type of travel. If it's walking or maybe it's for folks with disabilities, you can adjust that so it's wheelchair access only. So you have a lot of different options there with the routing and navigation. I could also do closest facility. So in this case, I've got a room and I want to identify where is the closest fire extinguisher. It easily searches for the nearest fire extinguisher. You select it, and then you simply have the route that takes you right to that nearest fire extinguisher. So again, very handy tools and features and in your ability to be able to navigate and find those features quickly and efficiently. Okay. So that kind of explains some of the functions of the ArcGIS Indoors. And what I'd like to kind of wrap up here with, if we talk about, okay, if I need to, have, first of all, some takeaways that I want to think about and just reinforce on this concept of using GIS, especially for facility management and critical incident mapping. Number one, again, all spatial data is accessible in one location. So you have your floor plans, you have your asset layers, you have your safety and security layers. You can add utility information, utility shutoffs. It's all in one location. It's easy to update and share across that organization. And then also, thirdly, it's an expandable framework that you can build on in the future. So you can add additional layers. You can, have your entire campus on there, and a lot of information to build on in the future. So where to start? If your facility, your organization, your school district is looking at, how can I get going? What can I do to implement some better, more intuitive mapping and spatial components? We have a couple options that we do offer. One is the campus feasibility study. And this feasibility study looks at your campus as a whole, and we come on site, we look at what you have for CAD data or BIM data, if you have any of that. And we analyze that. We look at it compared to kind of do a walkthrough, compare that to what you actually have on site. And then we give you a report that evaluates, what's the level of effort needed in order to be able to implement a GIS specifically for your campus. So it's kind of a way to take an overall holistic view of your entire campus, including multiple facilities. We also have what's called a facility audit, and our facility audit is more of a way to look at an individual facility and say, what do we have here to start with? What components do we have available? Whether, again, that's CAD or maybe hard copy blueprints, and what level of effort is required to implement a GIS for this facility. And then what are the third-party applications that might be in use that we can tie in this mapping component to, that we can link together. So it's a good way to evaluate more of a specific facility. In your case, of your school district has maybe typically, 4, 5, 6 buildings within their district, it might behoove you to look at the campus as a whole and look at more of a feasibility study there. So these are some options just to get you going, and then be able to get a feel for what level of effort that might take to expand and build on. And then we have more information. Feel free to visit our website, cloudpointgeo.com/indoor mapping, and it can share more information as well as those campus feasibility study and facility audit white papers are available there as well.